Commander Azrath, the Eternal, stretched his wings across the bridge of his flagship, the scales along his spine glowing with barely contained power. He had lived for 12,000 years and conquered 43 star systems. The ship's view screen showed a small blue world spinning peacefully in the darkness. Earth, the humans called it. Such a tiny thing, Azrath said to his second-in-command, a younger dragon named Vorth. How long did it take them to reach the stars? Less than a century after they split the atom, Vorth replied, studying the data scrolling across his console. They're remarkably fast learners, Commander. Perhaps too fast. Azrath laughed, a sound like rolling thunder. Too fast? There is no such thing. They're primitives who stumbled into faster-than-light travel. They'll learn their place soon enough. He turned to the communications officer. Send the standard declaration. The message went out across all human frequencies, translated into their dominant languages by the ship's computers. It was the same message the Raconic sovereignty had sent to hundreds of species over 50,000 years. Submit to Dragon Rule. Accept your place in the natural order. Receive the benefits of civilization and technology far beyond your primitive understanding. Resist and face extinction. Az Wrath expected the usual response. Fear, panic, perhaps some futile military posturing before the inevitable surrender. Instead, the humans sent back a single word. Why? The question caught Azrath off guard. Why? He repeated. Because we are dragons. Because we have ruled the galaxy since before your species learned to make fire. Because it is the natural order. But why should we submit? Came the human response. The voice belonged to a female, calm and curious. We're doing fine on our own. We have our own government, our own laws, our own way of life. We don't need rulers from another star system. Vorth shifted uncomfortably. Commander, this is unusual. Most species recognize our superiority immediately. They will learn, Azrath said. He opened a channel back to Earth. You have one rotation of your planet to accept our terms. We will establish orbital stations above your major population centers. You will provide us with resources, technology, and labor as tribute. In return, we will allow you to continue existing. There was a long pause. Then the human laughed. Actually laughed. I'm sorry. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not interested in being conquered. Please leave our star system. Azrath's eyes blazed with golden fire. In 12,000 years, no one had dismissed him so casually. You refuse? We politely decline your offer of subjugation. Yes, the human said. If you're interested in trade or cultural exchange, we can discuss that. But conquest is off the table. There is no discussion, Azrath growled. Submit or be destroyed. Then I guess we'll be destroyed, the human said cheerfully. Have a nice day. The channel closed. Azrath stared at the view screen in disbelief. Vorth's tail twitched nervously. Commander, what are your orders? We'll give them their demonstration, Azrath said coldly. Target their colony on the fourth planet, the one they call Mars. Destroy it completely. The Dragon fleet moved into position. Mars colony housed 50,000 humans, small by galactic standards, but significant for such a young spacefaring species. 3 Dragon warships fired their main weapons. Ancient technology powered by the cosmic forces dragons had mastered millennia ago. The colony's shields lasted less than a second. The habitation dome shattered. Atmosphere vented into space. Within minutes, the entire colony was gone, reduced to glowing debris. Send them the footage, Azrath ordered. Let them see what resistance costs. The response from Earth came within an hour. This time, it wasn't the calm diplomat. It was a different human, male, his voice hard as frozen steel. You just killed 50,000 civilians. You targeted a scientific research station with families. Children. I demonstrated the price of defiance, Azra said. Surrender now, and there will be no further bloodshed. No, the human said simply. We will not surrender. Ever. You have declared war on humanity. We accept. Azrath almost laughed. You cannot win. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have warriors who have fought for thousands of years. What do you have? We have 7 billion very angry humans, the man replied. And you just made a really big mistake. Threats mean nothing, Azrath said. You will submit or you will die. Then we'll die, the human said. But we'll take as many of you with us as we can. He paused. You should know something about us, dragon. We're really, really good at killing each other. We've had lots of practice. And if we can turn that skill on an outside threat. The human's voice became almost cheerful. Well, let's just say you're about to find out what humans do when someone threatens our home. The channel closed again. Azrath turned to Vorth. Prepare the fleet for orbital bombardment. We'll reduce their major cities to ash. They'll surrender before the week is out. But Vorth was reading something on his console, his expression troubled. Commander, I've been reviewing the human data our scouts collected. Their history is concerning. Concerning how? They've had 2 global wars in just the last century, Vorth said slowly. Wars that killed millions of their own kind. They developed nuclear weapons and used them on each other. They've created biological weapons, chemical weapons, weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. And according to this data, they've never actually stopped fighting. Somewhere on their planet, humans are at war with other humans right now. They've been fighting for their entire recorded history. So they're violent primitives, Azra said dismissively. That changes nothing. Commander, Vorth said quietly, they've survived every war they've ever fought. Against themselves. Against their own planet. Against diseases, disasters, extinction events. They're not just violent. They're persistent. And according to this psychological profile, they have something our analysts can't quite categorize. A refusal to accept defeat that borders on the irrational. Every species thinks itself special, Azrath said. But something in Vorth's tone made him uneasy. What else? Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years, Vorth continued. Predators, climate shifts, ice ages, volcanic eruptions. They survived by adapting, by changing, by refusing to die, no matter what nature threw at them. And now they've turned that same stubborn survival instinct into an entire civilization. As Wraith stared at the blue planet on the view screen, for the first time in a very long time, he felt something unfamiliar. Not quite fear, not yet, but doubt. It doesn't matter, he said firmly. Stubbornness means nothing against superior firepower. Begin the bombardment. As the Dragon fleet moved toward Earth, Azrath received one final message from the humans. It was short, just a single sentence. We're ready. Are you? The war began. The first battle should have been the last. Azrath's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, expecting to face primitive defenses. Instead, they found a waiting armada of human ships. How many vessels? Azrath demanded. 237, Vorth reported. Commander, that's impossible. Our intelligence said they had maybe 50 warships total. Then our intelligence was wrong. Azra studied the human formation. The ships were smaller than dragon vessels, built with sharp angles and bristling with weapons. They looked aggressive, designed for one purpose only. No matter. We faced worse odds. Attack formation. The battle was brief and brutal. Dragon ships fired beams of pure cosmic energy that could melt through starship hulls like paper. Human ships responded with missiles, railguns, and weapons the dragons didn't recognize. The humans lost 40 ships in the first minutes, then 60, then 100. "They're breaking," Vorth said with satisfaction. "See? They're fleeing." But Azarath wasn't so sure. The human ships weren't scattering in panic. They were regrouping, reforming, attacking from new angles. And they were learning. He watched as human ships began dodging dragon fire with increasing success, as if they were analyzing the weapon patterns in real time and adapting. When the battle ended, the dragons had destroyed 192 human ships, but they'd lost 3 of their own, and another 5 were damaged. In 12,000 years, Azarath had never lost 3 ships in a single engagement. Acceptable losses, he told Vorth, though his tone was less certain than before. They fought bravely for primitives. Now they know they cannot win. 2 weeks later, human ships attacked a dragon supply depot in the outer system. 50 human vessels emerged from behind a moon, fired everything they had, and destroyed the depot before jumping away. When dragon reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone. "Hit and run tactics," Vorth observed. Clever, but ultimately futile. The attacks continued. Small human forces striking fast and disappearing. Dragon ships found themselves chasing ghosts. And every time the dragons engaged a human fleet, the humans seemed to have learned something new. New tactics, new weapons, new ways of fighting. 3 months into the war, Azarath received disturbing news. A dragon patrol had intercepted human communications about something called Project Prometheus. The humans were deliberately exposing volunteers to dragon fire to study its effects, trying to develop resistance or countermeasures. "They're using their own people as test subjects," Vorth said, horrified. "That's barbaric." "That's desperate," Azarath corrected. But it was also effective. Human ships began deploying new shields specifically designed to disperse dragon energy weapons. They weren't perfect, but they bought precious seconds of survival time. 6 months in, the humans unveiled something new. A human ship, heavily damaged and about to be destroyed, suddenly accelerated to faster-than-light speed and rammed directly into a dragon cruiser. Both ships vanished in a flash of exotic radiation. "They weaponized their FTL drives," Vorth whispered. "They turned their own ships into suicide weapons. Who would volunteer for such a mission?" Azarath wondered aloud. He got his answer when dragon intelligence intercepted more human communications. Thousands of humans were volunteering for the FTL ramming missions. Thousands. They called themselves the Eater's Corps. Each volunteer knew they wouldn't survive. They didn't care. 1 year into the war, Azarath stood on the bridge of his flagship and reviewed the casualty reports. The dragons had destroyed hundreds of human ships and killed millions of humans. But humanity had killed thousands of dragons, destroyed dozens of warships, and shown no signs of surrender. Worse, they were getting better. Every battle taught them something new. Every loss made them more dangerous. It was as if the entire human species was learning and evolving in real time, adapting to dragon tactics faster than the dragons could adapt to theirs. "Commander," Vorth said quietly, "we're receiving reports from the forward fleets. The humans have deployed a new weapon. They're calling it a planet cracker." Azarath felt his blood run cold. Planet crackers were theoretical weapons, capable of destabilizing a star and destroying an entire solar system. The Draconic sovereignty had abandoned such weapons millennia ago as too dangerous, too indiscriminate. They wouldn't. Even humans wouldn't be that insane. "They're threatening to use it on any system we control if we don't withdraw from the Sol system," Vorth said. "Our analysts believe they're serious." "They'd kill billions of innocents," Azarath said. "Subject species who have nothing to do with this war. They say they'll give warnings, allow evacuations, Vorth explained. But yes, Commander. They're willing to destroy entire star systems to win. As Roth pulled up the human psychological profiles again, reading them more carefully this time, there was a phrase that kept appearing in human military history: total war. The concept that in certain circumstances, humans would commit every resource, accept any sacrifice, cross any line to achieve victory. They're mad, Azrath said. Yes, Vorth agreed, but effectively mad. 2 years into the war, human strike teams began appearing behind dragon lines. Small groups of humans, heavily augmented with cybernetics and biological modifications, attacking dragon infrastructure. They sabotaged supply lines, destroyed communications arrays, and assassinated dragon commanders. One team infiltrated a dragon research station and stole genetic data. All 6 team members died in the process, but they transmitted the data before they fell. Within months, humans were deploying biological weapons specifically designed to harm dragon physiology. How are they adapting so quickly? Azrath demanded. It takes us decades to develop new weapons. They do it in months. They're not following proper testing procedures, Vorth explained. They're skipping safety protocols, taking risks no rational species would accept. Our intelligence suggests that for every successful human weapon, dozens of prototypes fail catastrophically, often killing the researchers. But they keep trying. They accept the casualties as acceptable losses. What kind of species accepts such waste? The kind that refuses to lose, Vorth said quietly. 3 years in, the unthinkable happened. A human fleet penetrated dragon defenses and attacked a colony world in the draconic sovereignty's inner territories. They destroyed military installations, orbital platforms, and jumped away before reinforcements could arrive. The dragon homeworlds, untouched by war for 50,000 years, learned what it felt like to be vulnerable. Azrath stood before the High Council and delivered his report. 23 dragon ships destroyed, 5,000 dragons dead, millions of subject species casualties. And the humans showed no signs of stopping, no willingness to negotiate, no fear of further losses. They're bleeding us, Azrath concluded. Slowly but certainly. They trade 10 ships for one of ours and consider it a victory because they can build 10 ships faster than we can build one. They trade 1,000 lives for 1 dragon life and celebrate because their population is larger. They're fighting a war of attrition, and they're willing to pay any price. Then we must pay an even higher price, an elder dragon growled. We crush them completely. With respect, Azrath said carefully, I'm not sure we can. Every day, they become more dangerous. Every battle teaches them more. They're learning to fight us better than we're learning to fight them. And they have something we lost long ago. What's that? Desperation, Azrath said. They fight like a species that knows extinction is possible. Like a species that survived it before. We fight like conquerors who've never truly been challenged. And that's making all the difference. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the eldest dragon spoke. What do you recommend, Commander? Azrath thought about the human he'd spoken to 3 years ago, the one who'd declared war so casually. He thought about the thousands of suicide pilots, the researchers who died testing weapons, the strike teams that fought to the last breath. He thought about a species that had survived ice ages and supervolcanoes and their own worst impulses. And he wondered if the dragons had finally met something they couldn't conquer. I recommend, Azrath said slowly, that we start considering alternatives to total victory. The war entered its 4th year, and Azrath realized with growing dread that the draconic sovereignty was losing. Not quickly, not obviously, but steadily and inevitably. The dragons still won most battles, but each victory cost more than the last. And the humans seemed to have an endless supply of ships, weapons, and warriors willing to die. "We've intercepted their latest project files," Vorth reported, his voice grim. "They're calling it Pandora." Azrath examined the data, and his ancient blood ran cold. Pandora was a self-replicating weapon, a nanoplague designed specifically to target dragon biology. It would spread from dragon to dragon, causing cellular breakdown. And it was designed to mutate and adapt. "If they release this," Azrath said slowly, "it could kill every dragon in the galaxy." "Yes," Vorth said, "and according to their own projections, it has a 30% chance of mutating beyond their control and potentially threatening other species, including themselves. And they're building it anyway? They've already built it, Commander. They're ready to deploy it if we don't accept their terms." Azrath slammed his fist against the console. "They're insane. They'd risk the entire galaxy on a 30% chance. They calculate that we'll surrender rather than force them to use it," Vorth explained. "They're betting everything on our rationality. And if they're wrong? If we call their bluff?" Vorth met his commander's eyes. "Then we all die. Them, us, possibly everyone." Azrath thought about the human he'd spoken to at the war's beginning, the one who'd said they were really good at killing each other. He finally understood what that meant. Humans weren't just willing to die for victory. They were willing to risk extinction itself rather than surrender. The High Council convened again, this time in crisis mode. Reports flooded in from across dragon space. Subject species were becoming restless, questioning whether dragon rule was worth the cost of this endless war. Some were already refusing to provide resources, citing the danger of human retaliation. A few had begun secret negotiations with human envoys. "The Empire is fracturing," the eldest council member said. "A war that should have lasted weeks has lasted years, and it's tearing apart everything we've built." "We can still win," another dragon insisted. "One massive assault on Earth itself. Destroy their home world and break their will to fight." "We've considered that option," Azrath said wearily. "Our analysts believe the humans have already seeded backup populations on hidden worlds throughout the galaxy. They've sent generation ships beyond our borders. They've uploaded millions of consciousness patterns into distributed computer networks. Even if we sterilize Earth, humanity itself would survive. And the survivors would dedicate their entire existence to destroying us. Then what can we do?" Before Azrath could answer, a new message arrived from Earth. This time, the humans weren't making threats. They were making an offer. The message came from something called the Unified Human Command, and it was surprisingly simple. Both sides stopped fighting immediately. Dragons withdraw from human space. Humans withdraw from dragon space. A demilitarized zone between their territories. No reparations, no tributes, no subjugation. Just peace. But there was one additional condition. Any species under dragon, rule who wanted independence would be granted it. And the draconic sovereignty would never again attempt to conquer another species. "This is unacceptable," a council member roared. "They're demanding we abandon our entire way of life." "They're offering us survival," Azrath countered quietly. "At the cost of our pride. We are dragons. We do not surrender." "No," Azrath agreed. "We don't. But perhaps we can stop fighting." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to continue the war, believing that dragon pride demanded nothing less than total victory or total destruction. Others, particularly the younger dragons who'd actually fought humans, argued for accepting the offer. Finally, Azrath asked the question that had been haunting him for months. "What if we win? What if we somehow manage to destroy humanity completely, at whatever cost? What then?" The council chamber fell silent. "We'll have an empire built on fear," Azrath continued. "Every subject species will know that if they resist, we'll fight them for years and kill billions to prove our dominance. They'll know we're willing to risk everything rather than show weakness. Is that how we want to be remembered? Is that the legacy we want to leave? It's better than being remembered as the dragons who surrendered, someone muttered. Is it? Azrath pulled up casualty reports, projections, intelligence analyses. In 4 years, we've lost more ships than we lost in the previous 1,000 years combined. Thousands of our people are dead. Our economy is strained. Our subject species are restless. Our reputation as invincible is already shattered. If we continue fighting, we might eventually win, but we'll be so weakened that another species could challenge us. We'll have traded our comfortable dominance for Pyrrhic victory. He paused, letting his words sink in. Or we can accept the human offer, maintain our strength, keep our existing territories, and simply admit that one species in the galaxy isn't worth conquering. One species that's too stubborn, too adaptable, and too willing to drag everyone down with them if necessary. You're saying we should fear them, an elder dragon said. I'm saying we should respect them, Azrath corrected. There's a difference. We don't have to fear humans to recognize that fighting them is unprofitable. We don't have to admire them to accept that they've proven themselves worthy of being left alone. The debate continued for days. Meanwhile, human attacks continued, methodical and relentless. They weren't trying to conquer dragon worlds. They were simply making the war as costly as possible, proving that they could sustain the conflict indefinitely. During the debates, Azrath received a private message. It was from a human commander named Chun Zhao, who identified herself as a civilian volunteer who joined the military after Mars colony was destroyed. She'd lost her daughter, her son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren in that attack. I'm dying, Chun Zhao told him calmly. I volunteered for biological augmentation that would let me survive in combat against dragons. The process is killing me. I have maybe 6 months left. Do you know how many humans volunteered for the program? Azrath didn't answer. 1,000, Chun Zhao continued. I'm the only survivor. The other 999 died during the augmentation process. Their bodies couldn't handle the modifications. But they volunteered anyway, knowing the odds. Do you understand what that means? It means you're desperate, Azrath said. It means we're committed, Chun Zhao corrected. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand what you're fighting. You're not fighting an army or a government. You're fighting an idea. The idea that we choose our own destiny. That no one, not even ancient dragons from the stars, gets to tell us how to live. And humans die for ideas, Commander. We always have. We'll die for freedom, for revenge, for pride, for survival. We'll die slowly or quickly, painfully or peacefully, but we'll die before we kneel. She paused. Your council is debating peace terms. Accept them. Not because you're weak, but because you're smart. Because you've finally met a species that's just crazy enough to beat you through sheer, stubborn refusal to lose. The transmission ended. Azrath sat in his quarters, thinking about 999 humans who died just to create one weapon against dragons. Thinking about the suicide pilots, the plague makers, the strike teams, the millions of dead. Thinking about a species that had survived for millennia by refusing to accept extinction, and had now turned that survival instinct into a civilization-wide determination. When the High Council voted, it was close. But ultimately, pragmatism won over pride. The draconic sovereignty would accept humanity's terms. The peace treaty was signed in neutral space, on a station built specifically for the occasion. Azrath represented the draconic sovereignty. The humans sent a delegation of 12 people, representing their various nations and governments. One of them was Chun Zhao, visibly weakened by her augmentations, but still standing. The terms were simple. Both sides would withdraw to their respective territories. A buffer zone of empty space would separate them. Human ships wouldn't enter dragon space without permission, and dragon ships wouldn't enter human space. Any disputes would be handled through diplomatic channels. The part that hurt dragon pride the most was the independence clause. Within a year, 23 species formally declared independence from the sovereignty. The dragons let them go without protest, just as they'd promised. The empire that had stood for 50,000 years began to quietly dissolve. "We're witnessing the end of an age," Vor said as he watched the last independent species celebrate their freedom. "No," Azrath said thoughtfully. "We're witnessing the beginning of a new one. One where species aren't conquered, where they stand on their own merits. Perhaps that's not such a terrible thing." Vorth looked at his commander in surprise. "You've changed." "War changes everyone," Azrath said. "Even dragons." The years passed. The demilitarized zone held. There were occasional tensions, minor incidents, but nothing that escalated into renewed conflict. The humans continued expanding in their direction, the dragons in theirs, and they stayed out of each other's way. Azrath watched human development from afar, fascinated despite himself. They were building, creating, exploring with the same intensity they brought to war. They weren't content to simply survive. They wanted to thrive, to push boundaries, to see what was possible. It was exhausting just watching them. 10 years after the war ended, Azrath received an unexpected invitation. The humans were holding a memorial ceremony for all the war dead, from both sides, and they wanted him to attend. He almost declined, but curiosity got the better of him. He traveled to Earth in secret, disguised using technology the dragons rarely employed. He wanted to see humanity's homeworld for himself. To understand the species that had defeated the sovereignty. Earth was beautiful in ways he hadn't expected. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. A living world, vibrant and complex. The humans had rebuilt quickly after the war. Cities sparkled across the night side of the planet. Orbital stations bustled with activity. It looked like a civilization confident in its future. The memorial ceremony was held at the site of the former Mars colony, now rebuilt and thriving. Millions of names were carved into black stone walls, human and dragon alike. Azrath walked among them, reading the names of dragons he'd known, warriors who died in battle thousands of light years from home. A young human woman approached him. She was perhaps 25 in human years, with dark hair and curious eyes. She looked at him carefully, and Azrath realized with a start that she'd seen through his disguise. "You're a dragon," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "The way you move. The way you look at things. My grandmother taught me to recognize the signs before she died." The woman smiled sadly. "She fought in the war. Chun Zhao. She talked about you sometimes." Azrath felt something twist in his chest. "I'm sorry for your loss. Are you sorry for the war?" It was a fair question. Azrath considered it carefully. "I'm sorry for the deaths, for the destruction, for the pain we caused. But I'm not sure I'm sorry for the outcome." The woman raised an eyebrow. "That's surprisingly honest." "Your grandmother taught me the value of honesty," Azrath said. "Among other things, she showed me that humans aren't just warriors. You're survivors, adapters. You're people who refuse to accept fate." "That sounds like her." The woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flower, one of the memorial flowers that visitors were leaving by the names. She offered it to Azrath. "Would you like to leave this for someone?" Azrath took the flower, its petals soft against his scaled hand. He walked to the dragon section of the memorial and placed it beneath the name of a young warrior who died in the first battle. One of the first casualties of a war that should never have happened. "Why did you fight so hard?" Azrath asked the woman. "Your grandmother said humans die for ideas. But why? What idea was worth millions of lives? The woman thought about it for a long moment. Freedom, I guess. The right to choose our own path. Humans have fought for that idea since the beginning of our history. We've fought against nature, against each other, against anyone who tries to take that choice away. She paused. We're not always smart about it. We make mistakes. We go too far sometimes. But we'd rather die free than live as subjects. Even if dying free means everyone dies? Even then. She looked at him seriously. Does that frighten you? It terrifies me, Azrath admitted. Your species shouldn't exist. By every rational calculation, you should have destroyed yourselves millennia ago. You're too violent, too stubborn, too willing to risk everything. And yet here you are, building and growing and reaching for the stars. Maybe that's exactly why we exist, the woman suggested. Because we don't accept limits. We don't believe in should or can't. We just try things and see what happens. Sometimes we fail spectacularly. Sometimes we succeed beyond expectations. But we never stop trying. They stood together in silence, looking at the memorial walls. Thousands of names. Thousands of lives ended by a war neither side had truly wanted, but both sides had been too stubborn to stop. What happens now? Azrath asked. Between our species? That's up to both of us, the woman said. We can stay separate, each doing our own thing. Or we can try to understand each other. Maybe even become friends. She smiled. My grandmother said you dragons were honorable. Proud, but honorable. She said that if you'd been any other species, you would have kept fighting until one side was extinct. But you were smart enough to stop. That takes a different kind of strength. Azrath thought about the council debates, the difficult decisions, the sacrifice of dragon pride for the sake of dragon survival. We didn't stop because we were noble. We stopped because continuing was too costly. That's still smarter than a lot of species would be, the woman pointed out. Pride kills empires. You chose to live instead. That counts for something. As Azrath prepared to leave Earth, he looked back at the planet one last time. Humans were down there, billions of them, living their short, intense lives. Creating art, advancing science, arguing with each other, laughing, crying, dreaming. They were chaos personified, a species that should have burned itself out long ago, but instead had turned their destructive potential into creative force. The dragons had lost the war, but in losing, they'd learned something valuable. They'd learned that power alone wasn't enough. That intimidation only worked on species that could be intimidated. That some species were better left to find their own way, no matter how chaotic that way might be. Back in dragon space, Azrath filed his final report on humanity. He described him as dangerous but not malicious, aggressive but not cruel, stubborn to the point of madness, but also surprisingly thoughtful. He recommended peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. The High Council accepted his recommendation. The draconic sovereignty, diminished but still powerful, focused on governing the territories they still held, but with a lighter touch than before. The age of conquest was over. The age of coexistence had begun. Vorth found Azrath on the observation deck one day, staring out at the stars. Do you regret it, Commander? The war? The peace? Every day, Azrath said honestly. But I also know we did the right thing. We met a species that refused to be conquered, and instead of destroying everyone in the attempt, we accepted reality. That's not defeat. That's wisdom. And if the humans become a threat in the future? If they grow too powerful? Azrath smiled, a surprisingly human gesture he picked up somewhere along the way. Then we'll deal with it. But I don't think they will. Humans aren't interested in ruling others. They're too busy arguing among themselves and trying to figure out what's beyond the next star. They'll leave us alone if we leave them alone. You sound almost fond of them. I respect them, Azra said. They taught dragons something we'd forgotten in 50,000 years of dominance. They taught us that we're not invincible, that we can be challenged, that we can be beaten, not through superior strength, but through sheer bloody-minded refusal to quit. He paused. And they taught us that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop fighting. In the years that followed, humans and dragons remained distant neighbors. They traded occasionally, shared some scientific data, maintained diplomatic relations. They never became close allies, but they never went to war again either. And across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. The dragons who had ruled for 50 millennia had met their match in a species of short-lived primates who refused to accept their place in the natural order. It changed the galaxy's entire understanding of power and dominance. The age of dragons was over. The age of choice had begun. And it had all started because one species was too stubborn, too adaptable, and too committed to freedom to ever accept conquest. The dragons had lost to human madness. But in the end, both species won something more valuable than victory. They won the wisdom to know when to stop fighting